Now I have it unmuted. Okay. Quite often I get to preach to the teenagers of this church, and occasionally they let me preach to you guys too. So we're going to have a little bit of fun this morning. I have a question to ask all of you, and I came prepared with a microphone for those brave enough to speak into it. I want to know the answer to one simple question, or hopefully it's a simple question. Why are you here today? Now, I know you've all probably had a very busy holiday season, some more than others. So you all could be just sleeping in this morning and enjoying some Z's, and I'm sure that some people are enjoying that, but why are you here this morning? Does anybody want to brave up and say why they're here today, right now? Erica? It's not just youth that get to answer this question, too, by the way. You pass that down? Thank you.
The atmosphere.
No.
The atmosphere.
She's here because she enjoys the atmosphere. Perfect. Anybody else? You just had this in your hand. Did you want to?
Absolutely.
All right.
I knew I'd be put on the spot. Thank you.
Yeah?
It's Sunday morning. This is what I do. This is part of who I am and how I built my faith.
Good answer. Good answer. Anybody else? Here, I'll even give you a little jog this morning.
To praise and worship God.
To praise and worship God. Someone have their hand up over here?
Pretty much the same thing, to worship, to give thanks to God for his son, Jesus.
That's a pretty good answer. Anybody else before I put this microphone away? No? Okay. So different times in my life I've asked myself, why am I here? And what am I doing? And one of the most interesting memories that I have of me asking myself this question was Katie and I had just started dating, and her family invited me to go camping with her. And we went camping to Elora Gorge. Has anybody here been to Elora Gorge? Does everybody know the Corrie at the Elora Gorge? So we went to the Corrie. At the Corrie, there's these smaller cliffs that you can kind of dive off of into the water, which is kind of cool, and there's this beached area. And this year, my recent girlfriend had just broken up with me, and that's why Katie and I started dating. And so she was there, and I loved her, and I love her, and I love her. Set myself up for that one. So I went with her and her family, and Katie's cousin had actually just started dating my ex-girlfriend. So I know, ooh, scandalous. So he was there, she was there, and so her cousin and her brother decided to come up with this great idea. Across the Corrie is the 75-foot cliff that you're not supposed to jump off into the water. And they said, why don't we go and climb up there and jump off this really big cliff? I said, what a great opportunity to impress my new family, my new girlfriend, and make my old girlfriend jealous. This is just perfect. So we climb up to this cliff, and we're standing there, and all of a sudden, her brother and her cousin start to laugh. Said, we're not going to jump. We're not stupid. I said, well, I'm going to jump because this is what I came up here for, and I'm more lazy than I am intelligent, and I don't really want to climb all the way back down. So I get ready to jump off this cliff, and I kind of psyching myself up, and I go to start running, and then all of a sudden I see how far down it actually is, and I scream and jump back from the edge. And so now I've given up my man card. So now I have to jump. There's no other option. I'm sitting there and I'm asking myself, why am I here? How did I get to this point in my life where I have a 75-foot cliff in front of me, and I have all these people now watching me, waiting for me to jump, and I have two guys that are coaxing me behind me? What would the reason for me to be to jump? And looking back at the time, the reasons were not good, but I did it anyways. And I ran and I jumped off the cliff. And in that moment, I remembered that I was terrified of heights. And they say you're supposed to do this pin drop dive, and that's the safest way to drop. And I panicked. And when you panic, you open up. And apparently when I hit the water, it echoed throughout the quarry. And so her cousin ended up jumping in after me because he thought I was dead. So after I jumped, after I hit the water, I just started to doggy paddle all the way back to the shore. And when I got out of the water, Katie came up to me and said, "Don't do anything that's stupid ever again." So I don't think I've done anything that stupid. But I now like to ask myself that question on a regular basis. Why am I doing what I'm doing? In my years of working with youth and working in youth ministry, the same question comes up quite often. Like, why do youth come out to youth group? I mean, our youth group meets on Friday nights. There are a lot of good things that you could do on Friday nights. There are a lot of entertaining, exciting things that you can do. Thankfully, our youth are choosing to come to church. And there's one kind of answer that everybody has, is that they love spending time together. They usually don't really care what they're doing, but they just love being together, hanging out, and enjoying each other's company. In 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 9, it says, "God is faithful, who has called us into fellowship with him." See, God loves to spend time with us. He wants to spend time with us. That's why he created us. He loves spending time with every one of us. But he also loves it when we come together and spend time with one another. And I love that that's one thing that we get to do at church. When God calls us to spend time with one another, he calls us to spend time with one another also with purpose. That there's something that we can do, that there's something in common that we can come together and do together. And at church, with your answers and what you've been saying, is that, we come together to worship God, to spend time with him, but as a community, as one group. To kind of unpack this a little bit more, I'm going to invite Jill up to read our scripture this morning.
From 1 John chapter 1, verses 1 to 7. The word of the Lord. That which was from the beginning, which we have heard, which we have seen with our eyes, which we have looked at, and our hands have touched, this we proclaim concerning the word of life. The life appeared. We have seen it and testified to it, and we proclaim to you the eternal life which was with the Father and has appeared to us. We proclaim to you what we have seen and heard, so that you also may have fellowship with us. And our fellowship is with the Father and with his Son, Jesus Christ. We write this to make our joy complete. This is the message we have heard from him and declare to you. God is light. In him there is no darkness at all. If we claim to have fellowship with him and yet walk in the darkness, we lie and do not live out the truth. But if we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of his Son Jesus purifies us from all sin. The word of the Lord.
I love John's language in that verse when he uses words like us, our, we. He uses this language because he's talking about us together as a community, being in fellowship together and being in fellowship with Christ. That we're spending time with one another, that we're enjoying each other's presence, and we're enjoying God's presence with us here this morning as well. See, I think I'm going to backtrack. I have a question for you, and I have candy for answers. Actually, I'll ask that in a little bit, sorry. But But just so you guys know, there's candy coming, so get prepared for that. I think to answer the question, why are we here and why are we physically at church this morning, I've kind of broken it up into three main categories. One is I want to be here. I physically want to come to church because I enjoy the worship, because I enjoy Joel's preaching. I'm trying to get any brownie points I can this morning. Because I enjoy the atmosphere. Those kind of answers are, I want to be here because these are things that I enjoy. Then there's the answers, I have to. Our sound team, which do an amazing job, our praise team, our children's workers, all these volunteers that make this service happen, they have to be here because they've committed to something. I'm preaching. It would be a lame service if the preacher didn't show up because he didn't want to. So we have to be here to speak. Or just if you are involved in some way in making this church work, you have to be here. And then there's the I need to. And the I need to, I find, is more spiritual. I need that spiritual connection with others. I need that spiritual connection with God. I need to spend time with others. I need the fellowship. I need these things so that I can live a healthy life with Christ. So the third group is the group that I want to focus on today. And we're going to unpack this a little bit and talk a little bit more. To help me out, I have found a video by Francis Chan, and we're going to play that right now.
Big Red Tractor and the Little Village. Once upon a time, in a little field, in a happy little village, lived a big red tractor. Every morning during plowing season, the village people, no, not those village people, would come out and start the red tractor. Everyone loved the tractor and the powerful noises it would make. They would cheer for the big red tractor because he would help them through plowing season. The people worked together to move the tractor. Half of the villagers would push from behind, while the other half would pull. They had been doing it this way for many generations. Some days they moved the tractor 10 feet. Some days they moved it 20. They did this for 3 whole months every year. Because of their hard work, the villagers always managed to plow the field, just in time to plant, and just before the rainy season. The rains would come to water the field. Then the sun would come out to make the crops grow. And then the people would come out and harvest all the new crops. It was just enough food to feed the entire village. One day, Farmer Dave was cleaning out his attic. To his surprise, he found an old book tucked beneath his great-grandpa's belongings. It was the owner's manual to the big red tractor. This book told about how the tractor was made and all of the great things it could do. Farmer Dave studied the book all night. He was shocked by what he was reading. According to the book, if the big red tractor was running properly, it could plow the whole field in just one day. Early the next morning, Farmer Dave gathered the villagers to tell them the good news. But nobody believed him. There's no way that tractor can move on its own, some said. One lady said, "It sounds like you're reading a fairy tale." The people laughed at him. This made Farmer Dave very sad. This didn't stop Farmer Dave from believing what he read. Every night, while the other villagers were asleep, Farmer Dave spent time repairing the big red tractor. One night, Farmer Dave fixed the tractor completely. He jumped on the tractor and had so much fun driving it, he ended up plowing the whole field in one night. The next morning, the villagers woke up and were in shock. The whole field had been plowed. "It's a miracle," one man said. "Maybe aliens came down," said an old woman. "No, look over there," a little boy shouted. It was Farmer Dave sleeping on the tractor. It was then that people shouted, "He was right. The tractor book is true." The villagers ended up plowing many fields that year and harvesting way more food than they could ever eat. They had so many leftover boxes of food that they began taking the boxes to other villages where food was scarce. the big red tractor and his little village soon became famous throughout the land. They became known as the most generous and life-giving people in the whole wide world.
So I'm sure you all started to pick up on that as the video went on, but the tractor is to resemble the church and how it can affect the people around us. And I'm not here to say that we need to change for the sake of changing, but I am here to ask one question. Why is it we do what we do at church? What not only makes up this Sunday morning, but why do we do the things that we do? And how do we get the most out of what we do? So I'm going to read something for you. Let's see if you guys can figure out where it's from. This is your Father you are dealing with, and he knows better than you what you need. With a God like this loving you, you can pray very simply like this. Our Father in heaven, reveal who you are. Set the world right. Do what's best, as above, so below. Keep us alive with 3 square meals. Keep us forgiven with you and forgiving others. Keep us safe from ourselves and the devil. You're in charge. You can do anything you want. You're ablaze in beauty. Yes, yes, yes. In prayer, there is a connection between what God does, and what you do. You can't get forgiveness from God, for instance, without also forgiving others. If you refuse to do your part, you cut yourself off from God's part. I'm sure also that many of you caught on that was the Lord's Prayer in a different translation. So that was the Lord's Prayer in the Message translation. And the Lord's Prayer has always been an interesting thing that I think that we do at church. It's text that Jesus physically gave us to say like this. You can repeat after me. This is how you can pray. And when I was a teenager, when I was starting to go to a church and they would say the Lord's Prayer, I always had this anxiety when he started saying the Lord's Prayer, because I'm like, I'm going to forget a word. I'm going to mess something up in this Lord's Prayer. I'm going to make a mistake. And I never knew. I'm like, oh, how does the pastor do it up here? And he just recites it, because if he messes up, then he messes everybody up. So I'm like, he's got to be really nervous when he's saying that. And then I started speaking at the retirement home in town, and they love the Lord's Prayer. And I'm like, the first time I ever said it, I just totally butchered it. And people came out to me and they're like, oh, it's okay. Like, you'll do better next time. Why don't you just print it out? And then Joel and I were talking about this, and he had told me a time when he was subbing in for another pastor, and he went to another church, and they always said the Lord's Prayer, and he would go up, and he said the Lord's Prayer, and he said trespasses, like we usually do here, and that church said debts. And so everybody was kind of fumbling up their words afterwards, and the next Sunday that he went there to say the Lord's Prayer, they had printed it out and put it on the pulpit, and in bold had put debts. That's just, don't forget, we say debts. And I think on some levels that when we do that, we're missing the mark. We're missing the purpose of what that Lord's Prayer is. Those are powerful words, and I think sometimes we can get into a routine, and I mean, you can hear the people, they just get into their mumble voice, and then they start saying Lord's Prayer. Or you get the people that are they're whispering it because they're like, oh, I'm going to mess it up. I'm going to say something wrong. It's not about messing it up. It's not about reciting something that you've memorized, but it's about understanding and owning the words that are coming out of your mouth. It's about owning those words, our Father who art in heaven, and just praying to him and talking to him and communicating with him and spending time with him. And I love the language in the Lord's Prayer. It just screams community when it says, when it says our and we and all these words as a community coming together to talk to Christ, to take this oath and say, we're going to forgive those because of the forgiveness that you've given us. And so I'm not saying that we need to read from the message and quote from the message, but I would challenge you the next time that we say the Lord's Prayer on a Sunday morning to just close your eyes and truly mean the words that you are saying. Truly mean, and I'm not saying that you're not, but just think about it. Think about those words and how powerful they are. And when we come together as one body of Christ, the power that those words have together. There's another thing I'd like to touch on that I really enjoy that we do together is communion. And a lot of churches do communion in different ways. Some have the cup that you come up and you drink from the cup and then he wipes it and that magically gets rid of all the germs on the brim and the next person drinks. Or they pass out the little glass cups or you dip into the cup and then you partake. It's something that maybe not a lot of people, especially in the outside world, understand why we do this together. But communion is another one of those things that we come together to do together as one body. And when Jesus took that bread and he broke it and he symbolized that this is going to be my body that's breaking for you so that you can have life. This is my blood that's going to be spilt out. That these symbolic things, these things that are so meaningful, that we don't take them for granted, that we understand every time that we take communion that we're entering into publicly, we're entering into this communion with Jesus. That together we're coming before Christ and saying, we will follow you together. I think that there's two important things to take from communion. One is a personal commitment that you're making. And I love it when I get to sit there and I'm holding the bread and I'm holding this cup of grape juice in my hand, that I can kind of check house and clean house and say, am I at a place where I'm ready to take this? Am I at a place where I'm ready to say, Jesus, I want to live for you every moment of every day? Or am I at a place where I need to say, you know what, there's some things that I need to do. There's some unforgiveness that I have in my heart. There's some conversations I have to have with people before I can tell Jesus that I want to live for you full-heartedly. So I think that there's that personal connection. I also think that there's just a public connection, a community-based connection, that when we're all taking this together, when everybody's eating the bread together, when everybody's drinking the juice together, and one of my favorite parts is when everybody puts the cup down and you hear cups dropping all over the place. But when we're taking this together as a community of Christ, that we're all making that commitment together that we are going to live for Christ. There's just something beautiful in that. There's something amazing in that. And there's other things that we do on a Sunday morning. I'm not going to touch all of them, but I'm going to challenge you to think about why you do the things that you do when it comes to offering and tithing and giving money to the church. When there's worship time, and we have an amazing worship director, we have an amazing worship program, we have amazing volunteers that make up the worship on a Sunday morning. Why do we engage in worship? Why do we sing these songs? Why do we play instruments? Why do we do that stuff? The children's time, why do we have children's time? Why do we have the fellowship time afterwards, other than we need coffee, otherwise we're cranky? But why do we go and drink coffee and juice and have cookies together? Why do we do these things on a Sunday morning? But there's one more that is one of the most important things for me, and I hope is also one of the most important things for you. But one thing that I really want to focus on are the sermons on a Sunday morning. Why do we come to listen to somebody speak for 30 minutes or 25 on a good day, or But why do we come in, just joking. Why do we come in, why do we come and listen to people speak on Sunday mornings? And this is where the candy comes into play. Can anybody tell me what Joel preached about last week? I'm putting you all on the spot. What's that? Zechariah? Did you preach about Zechariah? That was 4 weeks ago. It's in there. It's in there. You just got to scramble it up a little bit. Can anybody? The shepherd. The shepherd was last week. Good job. You want Smarties or Popeyes? Smarties, okay. There's also Scaries, because those were the Halloween candy left over. Okay, can anybody tell me what he preached about 2 weeks ago? The innkeeper. Bam. These guys are good. Okay, now, 3 weeks ago, did you Google or no? What did he preach about 3 weeks ago? Mary and Joseph, yes. Oh, Erica caught it. So good job. You guys actually did a lot better. You guys can give yourself a round of applause for that. So if you didn't know the answers to all three of those questions, don't beat yourself up. Okay, that's to be expected. We understand that not everything that we say is going to be remembered from up front, but why are we coming to church to listen to a sermon if we don't remember or if we don't let the words that are said sink in? Isn't that why we come to fellowship, to grow spiritually? We want to be challenged. We want to grow with God. The only way that we can grow is if we're stretched uncomfortably, if we put the time in. Can you imagine, for those of you that had kids, if your kids only had to go to school once a week? Okay, number one, that would be awful for most of you. But it would also be pretty ineffective, right? If they only went to school once a week, they wouldn't learn much. They wouldn't be challenged. They wouldn't have enough time to academically allow everything to sink in. They wouldn't let it change their life. It wouldn't become a natural part of what they do every day. I think it's the same on Sunday morning. If we just use Sunday morning as a destination, be like, well, I'm going to get my God time in on Sunday morning, and then I'm good for the week until next Sunday. Because then if you miss a Sunday, you're like, ooh, I'm like borderline here. I definitely got to get in there next Sunday. But what if we let what happens on Sunday be a launch pad for the rest of the week and say, this is the starting point to where I'm going to deepen my relationship with God every day? And I kind of went back into some of my old journals when I was a teenager, and I used to journal a lot, and I used to really enjoy journaling. And I went back and I started reading through some of my journals, and some of them were just so poorly written I couldn't even read what I was writing, but some of them, I was reading the content, I'm like, that actually shaped who I am today. That changed a direction in my life to form the opinions and the understandings I have right now. So what if we tried journaling and just writing down things that are said on Sunday mornings that's like, wow, that really spoke to me. And let's not forget that I want to go back later and I want to pray about that and I want to understand that a little bit better. At this church, we have a great opportunity because all the Sunday morning sermons are recorded. So even if you don't miss a Sunday morning service, you can log on to the website or go onto YouTube and you can Google search it or find it, and you can actually just watch the sermon again. Be like, oh, I remember that he said something about this, but I forget exactly what he said. You can go right back on there and say, you know what, I want to hear that again. I want to see what that is. And then even just getting plugged in different areas of your life. I mean, the church just started up that Right Now Media website where if you want to get deeper understandings of things, that you can do that now. That video, the Big Red Tractor, I got that off of the Right Now Media site, just to let you all know that that's where that came from. Or even joining a small group. I mean, the church has a ton of small groups, and it's a great place where if something happens on Sunday morning or something said that you don't quite understand or you disagree with, because that does happen, that you have a group of people that you can go to and say, you know what, guys, I'm really struggling with this. and I want to have a conversation. So there's different ways that we can get connected and that we can get plugged in with what's said and what happens on a Sunday morning. Now that video might have been a little bit cheesy, but I think that the message is still strong. That the villagers, before they understood how to effectively use the tractor, they were only feeding themselves. They were putting so much time and so much effort into creating food or creating fruit that they were effectively feeding themselves. But when they figured out how to use it effectively, they started feeding others around them. So I think the important question to ask is not why is church good for me, but why is church good for the people that I come into contact with? What am I getting out of church that is affecting the people in my life? And that's a difficult question to answer sometimes. But the thing that I love about this type of season is that next Sunday is actually going to be next year. The next Sunday that we get together is going to be 2015. And the thing that I love about New Year's is that I get to make new commitments and new goals, and I don't always hit those goals. I don't always stick to those goals, but I get to try, I get to have an opportunity to start something new. And what if we came to church next Sunday with a different understanding of what we do on a Sunday morning? What if we came ready to engage and experience the Holy Spirit? What if we came knowing the answer to the question, why am I here? I'll invite everyone to stand and we'll continue singing.